Thanksgiving. Did you go to Missouri? I said put this in our ticket. No, I went to Chicago. Oh yeah. Very great.
I just didn't want you to feel weird about it.
Here's one of those.
I didn't know
That's what pizza and beer bakers.
take a really good photo of
Too much luggage.
But not to you.
Oh, okay.
But keep walking in front of me, please. Hey, do you want a job? Would you like to light the first candle of Advent? Great. So, how do I do it? Have you come with me? You know, it's like church should have started 2 minutes ago, and I'm like, who's lighting this thing?
Who's lighting it anyway?
Hopefully your music and artistry skills are better than that. It sounded good. Thanks.
Go slow if you can. Slower, more slowly still. Friendly darkness or fearsome. This is no place to break your neck by rushing about, or by running about or crashing about into that which you cannot see. Then again, it is true. Different darks have different tasks, and if you have arrived here unaware, if you have come here in peril, or if you have come here in pain, this might be no place for you to dawdle. I do not know what these shadows in this space ask of you, what they might hold for each of you, or what ill may lurk inside each corner. It is not for me to reckon whether you should linger or you should leave. But this much I can ask for you, that in this darkness and in this season there be a blessing, that in these shadows and in this season there be a welcome, that in this night and in all that you are encompassed by, may you know love and faith, the kind of love and faith that knows your name. Friends, we gather in a world and in a time with just as much love and loss, equal parts suffering and solace, equal parts gratitude and lament. Living in a contemporary world that seemingly holds up a mirror to that of the ancient world. But we are gathered as a people of faith, a congregation of hope, a community of love, and a bold witness to joy. And as we rekindle this light this morning of Advent, beginning with the harrowing and darrowing candle of faith, help us to be people of bravery and courage who faithfully journey into this season of darkness together, unafraid of asking questions, unafraid of challenging assumptions, unafraid to proclaim the good news of Advent and Christmas once again, in pursuit of the more just and loving world that we know could be, should be, and must be. As we light this first candle, hold in your hearts the power of faith that can only be known in the company of this beloved community. Good morning. Good morning and welcome. Welcome back from the long holiday weekend for those of you who celebrated, and welcome to this wonderful and treasured season of Advent here at Fountain Street Church. My name is Reverend Christopher Rowe. I have the pleasure of serving as the senior minister here in this community where faith, hope, love, joy, peace, and justice are part of the shared works of our liberated and liberating faith. And on behalf of everyone who calls this 154-year ministry their spiritual home, please let me welcome you this morning to this time together. Whether you are gathered with us in this cathedral of love or you're joining us from the temples of your own homes or workplaces or in the car, please know that each and every one of you has value and meaning and truth that you bring into this beloved community. And it is in the spirit of that value and in that belovedness that we now turn to one another, we greet each other in the peace of love, and we prepare to be called back with our gathering hymn. Please pass the peace of love with one another.
got the right cue or not. As I was closing the door, I heard him say, as I light this candle, or as we light this candle, I'm thinking, oh, damn, I went too early.
We are entering this season of Advent, a season rooted in Jewish and Christian cycles of the Holy Year, as well as cycles of the earth and her natural rhythms. This season, we will be drawing upon the wisdom of the lectionary cycles, which both pull from the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, and we will also be drawing on the wisdom of ministers past. And I felt like an appropriate way to begin our season and our morning with one another is from the words of David Rankin, a former minister here at Fountain Street Church. So we will begin with our contemporary witness this morning. During the Advent season, we celebrate the qualities of faith, hope, love, and joy. Yet these must be viewed through a prism of paradox. No faith is worthy without the capacity to doubt all things, for then it is only credulity. No hope is possible without the specter of defeat in the wings, for then it is only dreaming. No love is strong without the dread of loss in the heart, for then it is only passion. No joy is complete without the certainty of sorrow in the future, for then it is only frivolity. Thus, it is wrong to mislead people with simplistic notions, for they distract us from the fullness of life. After all, the seas have storms, the clouds have lightning, and the roses have thorns. Our ancient witnesses come to us from both the Hebrew and Christian stories. Hear these words from their ancient authors as they inspire hope and faith in our contemporary world. First from Isaiah. In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many people shall come and say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and he shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. And then in response, the Christian lection says this: but about that day and hour, no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son of God, but only the Father. For as in the days of Noah were, so will the coming of Son Man be. For as the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away, so too will the coming of God's love be. Then two will be in the field. One will be taken, and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together. One will be taken, and one will be left. Therefore, you do not know what day the Lord is coming. But understand this: if the owner of the house had known in part what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have had his house broken into. Therefore, you must always be ready, for the coming of God is coming at an hour that you cannot and do not expect. Here ends our readings. All right, I'll admit it. This is not actually the first Sunday of Advent. Christians, of whom some of us are, who follow the liturgical calendar, are actually beginning their journey through Advent next week. I think I've been at Fountain Street long enough to have lost sight of that. And as I put this program year together, I was looking and counting, and Christmas Eve falls on a Sunday. And so I was like, well, there's no way that that's Joy Sunday too. We have to have its own Sunday for joy, and peace is on Christmas Eve. So obviously, I didn't even look. I just was like, obviously, Advent begins this Sunday after Thanksgiving. And then as Austin and I were working on things and programming things, we realized Christopher was way wrong and has really strayed 6 years far from his liturgical and lectionary-based roots. But I consider it a badge of honor to be welcomed into a community where we can roll with it. And so I truly was not going to say anything, and then over the weekend, those things that keep you up at night, I thought, well, what if one of these Fountain Streeters says to their neighbor or friend, oh, Advent's begun, and they said, no, we're doing that next week. And then they come to me and say, did you even know this? So I'm trying to get ahead of it here. So happy Advent, we're doing it anyway. Friends, it's often said that there is no Advent without Isaiah's prophetic witness, and understandably so. The ancient author of the book is quoted more than any other prophetic voice in the New Testament, not the least of which because of the ancient prophets' moving descriptions of the coming of an entirely new era and an entirely new world, worthy of investing faith and hope in for the ancient people. To this day, Isaiah's familiar words call out to each of us, in the days to come, in the days to come. A poetic and prophetic way of proclaiming the good news of a better world that could be and should be and must be. And within that good news, the ancient prophet envisioned a world in which the God of Abraham and the God of hope and the God of peace and, of course, the God of justice would come to dwell on earth and put an end to war once and for all, signifying and heralding and inaugurating and welcoming a new era of shalom, of peace on earth and of beloved community. You quite literally heard Isaiah's anthem of peace this morning as he said, they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against other nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. This profound and powerful modality of prophetic wisdom in these ancient poems is not just in their vision and their illustrations of hope and restoration in the days to come, but also in their ability to acknowledge the tension and the reality that we're not there yet. We're not there yet. In the days to come, then, becomes part of that modality in which we know that something's coming. We know that something is possible, something better than the suffering of this world is imminent, and something worthy of our hope and faith is within reach. But we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. In the days to come serves as a preamble to an imagined world in which all may know the wholeness of their humanity, the fullness of living, and the promise of collective flourishing, and where war and violence and injustice and oppression are not part of God's vision for a loving kingdom. To requote Isaiah again, by the grace of God, a great transformation is on the way. War into peace, weapon into tools, battlefields into gardens. We're not there yet, but it's coming. It's coming. And then almost like this antiphon, or this responsive chorus sung out for us this morning, we have those words that came later from Jesus, who picks right up with, but about that day and that hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor even I, only God. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. Now, to be frank and name an elephant that might be in the room, the litany that Jesus offered us this morning might seem a little dark and dismal and even a little dystopian. In a season and in a world that would rather welcome Advent with heralding trumpets and songs of joy, it's quite unsettling to experience Jesus' acknowledgement of suffering, be it for the world that was once known by Noah or the world that will experience impending apocalypse of God's justice. Hear those words once more. Then 2 will be in the field, 1 will be taken and 1 will be left. 2 women will be grinding meal together, 1 will be taken and 1 will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know when the day of the Lord is coming. Keep awake. Keep awake. Stay present. Pay attention. Pay attention. For a new era and a new world is nigh. But we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. This dissonance and this darkness that you might be experiencing this morning is intentional, because Advent is a deeply dissonant and profoundly paradoxical experience. You heard David Rankin's words earlier on that matter. Advent is not for the weak of heart or the poor in spirit, and it's certainly not for anyone who's just trying to coast their way to Christmas Eve and all of the carols and the candles. Advent's about becoming and arriving and changing and transforming. Advent is about sitting at that prophetic crossroads of what has been, what's to come, and what currently is. And Advent is about willingly and willfully going into the darkest places of yesterday and today, so that we might be fully awake and prepare ourselves for the transformation and restoration of tomorrow. This morning, we hear the ancient prophets Isaiah and Jesus call to our contemporary world in the darkness of this season and invite us into the shadows of this world that we occupy, so that we might more perfectly embrace the coming of a better world we know is possible. It's often said that to know justice, you need to know peace, and that to know peace, you must first know the suffering of your neighbor. And I think that that reality is deeply present in the season we are about to enter. In my not so humble opinion, I think that many contemporary North American Christians have allowed unchecked piety and rigid individualism to distract themselves from the heart of their own tradition's call to keep awake and to pay attention. And instead, they've turned their faith into a solo mission in which they are actively and aggressively out to save themselves and their own salvation from this mythical and mystical and magical understanding of this retaliatory and retributive God figure, all at the expense of the suffering of our neighbors, the injustices of our world, and the oppression of the very ones that we have been called to love as ourselves. And that's not the case in these ancient stories. And as we go through this season of Advent and journey into the heart of Christmas, we're going to be reminded again and again that God's kingdom and the coming of the Son of God is not about personal salvation or a literal heaven and hell, much less some kind of apocalypse or some kind of literal God figure that's going to come and save us. But instead, a new era and a new world of which and in which we are the co-conspirators and the co-creators. The very new era and the very new world that was foretold by Isaiah, in which all will know the fulfillment of faith, the wholeness of hope, the liberation of love, the joy of justice, and the promise, the deep and everlasting promise of peace. In the days to come, quite literally, you will be hearing once again Mary's Magnificat, heralding the good news of a world that could be and should be and must be. In the days to come, you will hear once again the good news of good tidings and great joy, told not to the powers and the principalities, but the lowly shepherds keeping watch by night, and those at the margins of our world in whom the God of love finds solidarity. And in the days to come, you will hear the angels proclaim fiercely liberating news of a new era and a new world, one entirely like our own, and for good reason. So my question for us today is, will we keep awake? Will we stay present? Will we pay attention? Will we pay attention? Systematic theologian Paul Tillich reminds us that faith is the state of being ultimately concerned. He said, the dynamics of faith are the dynamics of man's or one's ultimate concern. The dynamics of faith are the dynamics of one's ultimate concern. It is Faith Sunday, the first Sunday in which we boldly and daringly enter into the darkness on the wings of faith, and we bravely and courageously light that first candle of Advent truth. And I couldn't think of a more profound way to journey together this season than by beginning and asking ourselves, what is our ultimate concern? What is our ultimate concern? And this being Fountain Street Church, I know there are a multitude of responses to that. So take a moment and think about it. What is our ultimate concern? Where is our ultimate concern? Why is our ultimate concern? In whom and for whom is our ultimate concern? And probably most importantly, this day and this season, are we awake to those concerns? Are we awake to those concerns? Are we awake? A colleague of mine reminded me this last week that we don't actually know when we're asleep, but we do know when we're awake. We don't often consciously drift into unconsciousness, but we do wake in the morning and realize that at some point we fell asleep. We aren't usually aware of our transition into a state of slumber, nor are we aware of our absence from this world as we sleep, but inevitably we're awake. And we're aware we have been asleep. I have a bit of insomnia, and so I often will check the clock all night long. Some of you can probably relate. And at some point I wake up in the morning realizing that I had drifted away. In November of 2016, I remember waking up to news that the President of the United States had been elected for the 45th term. And while I'm speaking quite literally, I'm also speaking metaphorically in the stylings of Isaiah and Jesus. I had been asleep. I didn't believe I lived in a country that would vote on the side of values that were so extraordinarily different from my own. I didn't realize I lived among so many who didn't view inclusion or equality or mutuality or collective liberation in the same way I thought I did. And I didn't realize that I had been asleep to the concerns and the values and the perspectives and motivations of a large part of our country, at least until I was awake. More formatively speaking, I remember waking up in 9th grade on the morning of September 11th, the morning that my fresh-eyed, entirely optimistic, blissfully naive self learned that security and safety and stability aren't always guaranteed, even in white America. More contemporarily, I know without a doubt I was woken up from my privileged slumber by the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Patrick Lyoya and so many others in the hands of police. I know that I was awakened from my ignorant rest when I learned that something as tangible and rational and logical as science could be weaponized in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know that over the past several years, I have woken up to the harsh and searing reality of just how fragile our democracy is, and just how vulnerable our assumed constitutional rights are, and just how endangered our civil liberties are in the face of an ongoing and systematic dismantling of the integrity of our Supreme Court and the subsequent rulings that they have handed down over these past few years. The relevance of this morning's witnesses from Isaiah and Jesus, even in a church like ours, lives within their universal acknowledgement of what it means to be human, what it means to be asleep, and what it means to be awakened to the places and the spaces in our world that are so unlike the world that the God of these ancient stories imagines for us. But lest we forget, being asleep and awakened into consciousness does not implicitly infer that that which we are being awakened to is bad. When I was awakened to the forces of uncertainty unknown in our nation that led to those election results in 2016, I was also awakened to a new movement in our nation, largely driven by voices and perspectives and individuals and identities that for too long had been decentralized from the public square, not the least of which women's voices, queer voices, black and brown voices, immigrant voices, and voices of those for the first time were feeling empowered and emboldened to take ownership over their country in the name of love and justice and compassion and peace. When I was awakened to the very real and pervasive threat and forces of police brutality, not only in our nation, but right here in Grand Rapids, I was also awakened to an entire community of activists and youth working towards social transformation and collective liberation for all of us to enjoy. When I was awakened to the fragility of our justice system and the vulnerability of our democratic principles in those harrowing hours of January 6th, or the devastating reversal of Roe once protected, I was also awakened to the sleeping divine giant that was already dwelling within, among, and around all of us, as we saw monumental activism and community organizing coming together to fight to enshrine our human rights, to stabilize our democracy, and to gather in the company of beloved community in the name of creating the world that we knew could be, should be, and must be. That very world that was foretold by Isaiah, that very world that was anticipated in the life and ministry of Jesus, and that very world that this church has been working to make incarnate and manifest for 154 years. Even when we know, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Isaiah promises to us that the world that could be and should be and must be is not only possible, but it's coming. But we're not there yet. And then we have Jesus, who offers us this unapologetic litany of darkness and apocalyptic destruction in the name of justice, and it inspires us to keep awake, to stay present, and to pay attention. But the question that remains for all of us this morning is if we're willing to go on that Advent journey together. Are we willing to keep watch? Are we willing to stay present? And are we willing to prepare ourselves and our world for the coming of a new era and a new world that joins the arc of that moral universe and bends and turns and spins and moves towards justice and grounds itself in belovedness? And more importantly, are we willing to be and embody and encumber that world and become that era and the fulfillment of the faith and hope of the ancient world that's now been entrusted with the contemporary world? We're not there yet. We're not there yet, but I think that this church is on the right track. My Advent prayer for you today is that we use this season to commit ourselves through the gifts of faith, hope, love, joy, and peace to put ourselves on that track for the betterment of the future. Will you please take a moment of silence with me before we pray? God of the ages, Spirit that time cannot contain, Emmanuel within, among, and around us, wake us up. Wake us up to the places and the spaces in the world that need this church's witness most. Wake us up to those among us who need our love and our compassion and belovedness most. Wake us up to the future that is counting on us. In this season of dissonance and darkness and paradox, help us to remember that though we are not there yet, we are on the right track. Help us to remember that none of us have been called to do this work alone. help us to remember that the power of love, the promises of peace, and the fulfillment of faith already resides within us, among us, and around us. If only we choose to nurture that flame. And we pray this day we will. O come, Emmanuel. May peace be known, and may it begin with us. May it be so. Amen. You may be seated. If no other time of the year, this is the time of year to remember you have to read the words closely in here. This is different words than some of us are used to, and there's beauty in that. Friends, we have this rich tradition here of sharing half the plate with nonprofit organizations and collective impact groups that we know and we trust can do better for tomorrow than we can on our own. And the other 50% stays here to keep these ministries going forward, to keep our hope and our faith in the future alive, and to make sure that there is always a beacon of hope and love and joy and peace here in West Michigan. And so in the spirit of believing that tomorrow can be better and will be, and in the spirit of collective impact and working with our neighbors beyond these cathedral walls, our offering will now most graciously be received. As always, we have some announcements and invitations we want to share with you. But first of all, we want to acknowledge the beauty of the flowers that were given for today. They're just stunning, and they're a wonderful way to begin this season together. And those were given in loving memory of Gertrude Stephanie Vrana Chandler by her son Henry Matthews and her son-in-law Timothy Chester, her granddaughter Amelia Mahar and her husband Scott Mahar, and her great-granddaughters Layla and Josie Mahar. We are so grateful for these beautiful gifts, and we honor your mother, Henry, this morning in this time with one another. Thank you. You may have noticed that some of the holiday decorations are coming up. We are phasing into it along with our augmented lectionary schedule we're working off of this year. And so there are Christmas trees all throughout the building that do need your help. So if you are feeling inspired, you are invited to join along, hang some ornaments. They're in bins next to them. There's this beautiful ease about this community in which everyone's welcome to just help and make the joy known throughout the halls of this building. So don't worry if you're not a decorator or you don't have that spatial eye. That contributes to the beauty and the luster of this season here at Fountain Street. So please hang up an ornament as you walk by and feel like you're a part of the joy of the season with us. Also, you're invited to go to the social hall even if you don't want to decorate. In the social hall, we'll have coffee and tea, and everybody's welcome to just gather, be in the company of beloved community, and enjoy one another's presence as we begin this time of the year with each other, and it races towards Christmas. We also have a new Christmas tree this year. It will be out on the narthex, though I don't think it's been decorated just yet, but it will be covered in these little ornaments. It's a giving tree. And we are partnering this year with Fountain Montessori up on College, right off at the corner of Fountain. We have many families here at Fountain Street Church who actually have their kids there. We also have people in our church who teach there. And it's a pretty simple thing. You've probably done one of these before. You can see right here where it's going to say what the designated gift is that the school needs. I see Janet Peterson back there being a Vanna White with, I don't even know if that's the right analogy. She's doing something. I don't know shows, but she's got a whole bunch. And so you're welcome to get them right after the service or wait until they're up on the tree, because you have until Sunday, December 17th. I know that education in our community is a huge pillar value, and we also know that partnering with our local public schools to ensure that they have the supplies that are necessary for flourishing and thriving classrooms, and of course, flourishing and thriving futures, is a part of our mission. So please give generously if you're able, and if you have any questions about that, Marty Arnold is our point person for that this year. So thank you to Marty, thank you to the Fountain School for working with us on that, and thank you for your generosity. I also want to, in the vein of gratitude, put a tremendous amount of gratitude out into the universe for everyone who helped us with the Interfaith Thanksgiving service and hospitality celebration. Will you please join me in offering out into the universe our gratitude? Thank you so much. I know the Women's Association was a backbone in that hospitality hour. I know that the 9:30 chapel gathering made over 400 falafel for it. I know that we had almost 3 times the amount of attendance for the service than we were anticipating, or than the Kaufman Interfaith Institute was anticipating. It was a joyous and humbling and sobering evening for all of us at this time in our world. And every guest, every Kaufman Interfaith representative, everybody was just blown away by the hospitality, and not just like in that, like, oh, you guys are so nice, but in a truly just humbled by the thoughtfulness of the dietary restrictions for our Muslim and Jewish neighbors, and for the need to have warm food after a long service and here together. It was beautiful. So thank you, Fountain Street Church, for being Fountain Street Church when it matters most, and thank you to the people who really stepped up and contributed to that. And of course, thank you to everyone who makes our services possible and important and sacred and holy, not the least of which our choir and our accompanist and our choir director and Jonathan Took, and the ushers and the greeters, the child care staff, the teachers, everyone who makes this possible. And of course, all of you who continue to put yourselves into the center of this community in the pursuit of the loving and just world we know is possible. As you go forward from this time with one another, I want to invite you to wake up. And if you have woken up, pay attention. Pay attention to the place where faith's light is shining into the corners we didn't know existed. Pay attention to the places where hope is being kindled in your neighbor's heart. Pay attention to the spaces where love is commanded most by the God of love and hope and faith. Pay attention to the place where the justice of joy and the joy that can only be known through justice is possible. Pay attention and go in peace, knowing you are loved just as you are. Happy Advent.
Mm.